Dr. Vexthor's tertiary eye twitched as he stared at the holographic display floating above his workstation. In his 40 cycles as the Galactic Council's chief xenobiologist, he had cataloged over 12,000 species from across 17 galaxies. He had seen silicon-based life forms that breathed methane, hive minds that spanned entire star systems, and creatures that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. But this made no sense. "Run the scan again," he commanded, his vocal sac vibrating with barely contained frustration. His assistant, a young Chulian named Prith, bobbed her gelatinous form in acknowledgement. "Sir, I've run it 17 times. The results are consistent." Vexthor's claws clicked against the console as he magnified the genetic readout. The human DNA sample, acquired from the newly discovered species on the planet they called Earth, spiraled before him in all its confounding glory. The evolutionary markers were impossible, contradictory, paradoxical. "This can't be right," he muttered. "No species can be both." But there it was, encoded in every strand of their genetic material. Humans were prey animals. The scan showed clear markers: forward-facing eyes for depth perception while fleeing, sweat glands for endurance running from predators, a sophisticated fear response system, and a highly developed social structure for group protection. Classic prey evolution. Yet simultaneously, those same forward-facing eyes were a predator's trait, designed for tracking and catching prey. Their omnivorous teeth and digestive system, their throwing arms, their problem-solving intelligence meant for strategic hunting. The genetic markers screamed apex predator. "It's not both," Prith offered hesitantly. "According to the scan, they're actively hunting while being hunted. Present tense. Continuous state." Vexthor's primary hearts skipped a beat. That was theoretically impossible. Evolution didn't work that way. A species either ran or chased. It either hid or stalked. The biological stress of maintaining both states simultaneously would be— his console beeped. A priority message from the council chambers. "They're waking the human diplomat," Prith said, checking her own terminal. "First contact protocol. You're requested to attend." The observation deck was crowded with representatives from 24 species, all curious about the newest candidate for council membership. Vexthor pushed his way to the front, his scientific credentials granting him priority access. In the center of the chamber, the human was stirring. The stasis field had preserved her perfectly during the 3-month journey from Earth to the council station. Ambassador Sarah Chun, according to her file. Age: 34 Earth years. Occupation: diplomatic envoy and former military strategist. As the field dissipated, Chin's eyes snapped open. What happened next would be discussed in xenobiological circles for generations. Chin didn't bolt upright in panic like most prey species upon waking in an unfamiliar environment. Nor did she immediately assess for threats like a predator. She did both, simultaneously. Her body language was a contradiction, tense yet relaxed, ready to flee yet coiled to strike. Her eyes swept the room with a prey animal's wariness and a predator's calculation. "Welcome, Ambassador Chun," Council Speaker Mordak intoned, his translator rendering his words into her language. "You are safe among how many exits?" Chin interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. "What's the atmospheric composition? Are we under acceleration? Who's armed?" Every question revealed her dual nature. Exits, a prey response. Who's armed, a predator's assessment. The atmospheric question spoke to a creature that had survived by both fleeing dangerous environments and adapting to hunt in them. Vexthor found himself leaning forward, fascinated. 14 exits, Mordak answered patiently. The speaker had dealt with many confused species during first contact. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, slightly higher oxygen than your homeworld. We are in stable orbit, and no one here is armed. Weapons are forbidden in council chambers. Chin nodded slowly, and Vexthor watched as her shoulders dropped slightly, but not completely. She remained alert, always alert. He realized with a start that this was probably her resting state. "Thank you for that transparency," Chin said. "I appreciate the security measures." A pause. "Though I noticed the ventilation system could be weaponized, the gravity plating could be overloaded, and I count at least 3 species here with natural biological defenses that technically aren't weapons, but could definitely kill me." Nervous ripples spread through the assembled crowd. She'd assessed threats while thanking them for safety. She'd simultaneously accepted their hospitality and calculated how to fight her way out. Prey and predator. Fear and aggression. Running and hunting. All at once. Over the following weeks, as Chun underwent the standard integration process, Vexthor observed her obsessively. He couldn't help himself. She was a living impossibility. During the psychological evaluation, she described Earth's history with a matter-of-fact tone that left the evaluators disturbed. "We were prey for most of our evolution," she explained. "Big cats, bears, wolves, other hominids. We died. A lot. We were slow, weak, with no natural weapons. Soft skin, brittle bones compared to most predators." "Then how did you survive?" the evaluator asked. Chin's smile was unsettling, friendly, and threatening in equal measure. "We hunted the things that hunted us. We tracked them, learned their patterns, ran them down over hours, days, using our endurance. Then we made weapons and turned prey into predator. But we never stopped being prey. We just added hunting on top of being hunted." Vexthor checked his data. She was right. Humans had persistence hunted, literally chasing prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. But they'd also been persistence hunted by their own predators. They'd evolved to outlast both their prey and their hunters. The madness of it. During the physical evaluation, Chin requested permission to use the station's gym. Vexthor observed from the monitoring room as she ran on the treadmill for over an hour without stopping, her body settling into an efficient rhythm. Classic endurance adaptation for running away, but then she moved to combat training. Her movements were precise, aggressive, calculated. She practiced strikes and grappling techniques with the focus of an apex predator. "How often do you train?" Vexthor asked through the intercom. "Every day," Chin replied, not breaking her rhythm. "Maintenance. For what purpose? Earth has achieved global peace, according to your files. No more warfare." Chin paused, breathing hard but controlled. "Habit mostly. But also, we need it. Physically and mentally. Humans don't do well without physical challenge. We get twitchy, anxious, aggressive, depressed. We evolved under constant physical stress, running, fighting, hunting, escaping. Take that away completely, and we suffer." She resumed her training. "We need to be both running and chasing. It's wired into us." Vexthor made frantic notes. Humans required stress to maintain psychological health. They needed to simulate both fleeing and hunting regularly. Their nervous systems were calibrated for constant danger because they'd evolved in constant danger, as both prey and predator. The revelation came during a council emergency that a KRYLL mining ship had malfunctioned in a nearby asteroid field. The crew of 40 was trapped, and the ship's orbit was decaying toward a gravity well. Rescue ships couldn't reach them in time, and the council debated diplomatic implications while the miners slowly died. Chin stood up in the gallery where observers watched the proceedings. "I can help," she said simply. Mordak turned his massive head. "Ambassador, this is not your concern. You are not yet a full council member, and your species lacks the—" "I was a search and rescue specialist before I was a diplomat," Chin interrupted. "And I've reviewed your rescue protocols. They're designed for when you have time. You don't. Those miners have maybe 6 hours. Human ships are not equipped for—" "I don't need a ship. I need a shuttle, a pressure suit, and 3 of your best zero-G engineers who can take orders." The audacity of it silenced the chamber. A prey species volunteering to fly into danger. A predator species calmly planning a hunt. Both. Vexthor found himself speaking before he could stop himself. "Let her try." Vexthor monitored from the control room as Chun orchestrated the rescue. He watched her switch between prey and predator in real time, and finally understood. When calculating approach vectors through a debris field, she was prey. Cautious, precise, aware of every danger, every threat. Her voice over comms was calm, but you could hear the rapid assessment, the constant vigilance. But when she reached the damaged ship and had to make split-second decisions, she became predator, aggressive, decisive, adapting and attacking problems with creative violence. She jury-rigged explosive bolts, cut through hull plating with a mining laser, and manually hauled injured KRYLL through corridors filled with toxic gas. She ran from the danger, pulling survivors to safety. She hunted solutions, aggressively pursuing every possible avenue to save them simultaneously. She's terrified, Prith observed, monitoring Chen's biosigns. Heart rate elevated, stress hormones spiking. Classic fear response. Look at her decision-making speed, Vexthor countered. That's not fear paralysis. That's combat aggression. She's using the fear to sharpen her focus. They were both right. Chen saved 37 of the 40 miners. When she finally returned to the station, she was shaking, adrenaline crash. Her medical file would later note. She'd been in a state of extreme stress for 7 hours straight. Why did you do that? Vexthor asked her in the medical bay. You're a diplomat, not a rescue worker anymore. You could have died. Chen looked at him with those forward-facing eyes that spoke of both the hunter and the hunted. Because they needed help. Because I could help. Because. She trailed off, searching for words. Because sitting still while something hunts you is death. But sitting still when something needs to be hunted is also death. We're wired to move. To act. To be both terrified and aggressive at the same time. It should be unstable, Vexthor said. That psychological state should tear your species apart. Chen laughed. That strange human sound that could express joy or threat depending on context. Oh, it does. We're a mess, honestly. Anxiety disorders, PTSD, depression, aggression issues. We're a species living in constant low-level fight-or-flight response. It's exhausting. Then why? Because it works, Chen said simply. We're still here. We survived. We went from prey animals on the African savanna to a spacefaring civilization in the evolutionary blink of an eye. We're unstable, yes, but we're unstable in motion. Unstable while hunting. Unstable while running. And somehow, that's more stable than being either one or the other. 3 months later, the Council voted to accept humanity as a full member species. The vote was nearly unanimous, though several prey species representatives abstained, unnerved by humanity's predatory aspects. And several predator species abstained, disturbed by humanity's prey characteristics. N01 was entirely comfortable with humans, which, Vexthor reflected, was probably exactly the point he was finalizing his report on human genetics when Chen stopped by his lab. I hear you're publishing a paper on us, she said. 7 papers, actually. Your species has overturned several fundamental principles of evolutionary biology. Sorry about that. Don't be. It's fascinating. Vexthor pulled up his primary thesis. I've concluded that humans aren't an anomaly. You're a preview. Of what? The next stage of evolution. Most species evolve toward a niche, predator or prey, specialist or generalist. But intelligence allows for something new, the ability to be multiple things simultaneously, to hold contradictions in balance. He looked at her. Your species is terrifying and vulnerable, aggressive and cautious. You hunt while being hunted, and you've made it work. Chen considered this. So we're not broken? Oh, you're absolutely broken, Vexthor said. But you're broken in a way that might be the most advanced adaptation I've ever seen. You're broken forward. Chen smiled, genuinely this time. That might be the nicest thing anyone said about humanity. As she left, Vexthor turned back to his data. The genetic skin still showed the same impossible result. Prey. Predator. Both. Simultaneously hunting. But now he understood the final piece of the puzzle. It wasn't that humans were prey that learned to hunt, or predators that remembered being prey. Humans were a species that had looked at the universe's forced choice between running and chasing, and had simply refused to choose. They did both. All the time. Forever. And in that refusal, that evolutionary stubbornness, that absolute determination to be impossible, they had become something entirely new. Vexthor saved his report and marked it for immediate distribution across the Council's scientific networks. His conclusion was simple but revolutionary. Subject species, Homo sapiens. Classification, paradox apex. Recommendation, approach with equal parts caution and respect. They are prey that hunts, predators that flee. Beings of contradiction who have turned evolutionary impossibility into their greatest strength. In short, they are human. And that, colleagues, is explanation enough. He attached the genetic scan results one final time. Let the galaxy see what humanity was, prey, predator, both, hunting.